You are listening to the Fly the W670 podcast, season 3, episode 96. Pat Hughes returns to the Fly the W podcast. Don't forget to listen, download, review, most importantly, subscribe to the podcast. Follow on all the socials, Fly the W670 on Twitter, Instagram, and Fly the W on Facebook. Or email us at flythew670@gmail.com. All right, Crawly, hope you had a good Thanksgiving. This is going to be quick, this turnaround to Christmas with the Thanksgiving holiday being as late as it was this year.
Yep. We got a lot of stuff going on. We got the winter meetings coming up, and I kind of got a feeling it's going to be hopefully a much crazier roller coaster ride than last season.
Let's hope the Cubs are involved.
Yes, sir. But we with everything that's been going on, we kind of missed out that the Hall of Fame ballot was released on November 18th. Just so people know, there's a screening committee of baseball writers that select the names to appear on each ballot. So if you want to be a voter, only active and honorary members of the Baseball Writers Association of America who have been active baseball writers for at least 10 years shall be eligible to vote. They must have been active as baseball writers and members of the association for a period beginning of 10 years prior to the date of the election. So, Dustin, to be on the Hall of Fame ballot, you have to have been played in the big leagues for at least 10 years, be retired for at least 5 years, unless the player dies, and in that case, it can be waived. And they have to receive at least 5% of the eligible vote each year to remain on the Baseball Writers Association ballot for a full 10 years. So if you remember last season, there was 3 Hall of Famers. One was a first timer, that was Adrian Beltre, elected in the first ballot Hall of Famer. And then you have Todd Helton, Joe Mauer. That was your class of 2024. And then Jim Leland, of course, was in that as well.
Yeah, not the most exciting class, and definitely not a whole lot of Chicago connections in that one.
No. Now, this year's class has 14 returnees, 14 newcomers, 28 on the ballot. And so if you have a vote, you can choose up to 10 players on their ballot. Most guys don't put 10 on there. Now, I know a lot of people argue, Dustin, about that Hall of Fame versus the Hall of Very Good.
Mm-hmm.
But if you think about it, in baseball, only 1.5% of all baseball players throughout history have
well, that just shows you how many guys have played the game. I mean,
a lot of guys have played the game, but not a lot of guys have made it.
No.
A guy may have a cup of coffee, you know what I mean? Only pitch a couple innings. But what I did, Dustin, when I looked at this, is that Fangraphs did an incredible piece a few years back about what the average Hall of Famer looks like, and the numbers are really eye-popping when you look at it. I mean, I'm not going to go over all this stuff here, but if you just take a look at the numbers of a Hall of Famer compared to a non-Hall of Famer, most of the time it's pretty clear. And what Fangraphs did in that article is they found the sweet spot for the average Hall of Famer, right? So for a Hall of Famer, their WAR, win above replacement, is usually between 50 and 70, right? So WAR measures everything: base running, offense, defense, fielding, everything. And so that just kind of measures how many more wins a player is worth compared to a replacement level player at the same position. And so when we look here, this is the ballot for this year's Hall of Fame. When you talk about Chicago connections, obviously Mark Burley on the South Side is on the list. Curtis Granderson is he didn't play for the Cubs or Sox, but, big Chicago guy. Also looking at the list, the big one this year for Cub fan, Manny Ramirez, if you remember, was with the Cubs organization for a little bit at the end of his career, played for the minor league. I think he played for the I-Cubs. And then the big name, of course, is Ben Zobrist. I got to talk to Ben the other day at the Chicago Sports Spectacular. Great, great guy. So that is the those are the Chicago connections. And so, like we said, there's 14 returnees. And so these are guys that hit that 5%. So they're still on it. Some of them are in their second, third year. Others are in their final year. So I wanted to kind of look at this, each of these guys here really quick, and kind of go through the year, their WAR. And do you think, Dustin, their number is going to go up or down this year? Okay. First up, if you take a look here, this is the returnees. This is the list of the returnees right here: Bobby Abreu, Carlos Beltran, Mark Burley, Torrey Hunter, Andrew Jones, Andy Pettit, Manny Ramirez, Alex Rodriguez, Francisco Rodriguez, Jimmy Rollins, Chase Utley, Omar Vizquel, Billy Wagner, and David Wright. So those are the guys here. So Bobby Abreu is in his 6th year on the ballot. His he had 14.8% of the vote last time. His WAR is 60. So I mean, his WAR goes right in between that sweet spot of 50 and 70. Do you think that? I don't think he gets in. Not at 60%, Dustin. I'm sure you don't think he's going in either, correct?
I mean, I wouldn't. Let me ask you this, and maybe I should know the answer to this, but is there a minimum? Like, do they have to have a class? I mean, they have to have a class, right? They have to have a class so that there's an event, correct?
I mean
logically speaking, right? Okay. I'm just saying, like, when you read that, when you read those names, okay, when you read those names, there's nothing like this list does nothing for me. Zero.
Well,
I mean, it does, this list, does nothing. It's especially if guys aren't going to, like Manny Ramirez, right? Like,
right.
Is he on the drug? Is he on the drug list? Right. Alex Rodriguez, obviously on the drug list. Right. But he's still a broadcaster for their biggest product, on their biggest network. Right. So he's on that, but he can't be in the Hall of Fame. I just, it's weird.
The hypocrisy on that one is probably, one of the all-time weirdest things that you would have, Alex. Same with Pete Rose. Remember, Pete Rose was always on the Fox broadcast for the World Series and this and that. I remember, when he was with the Cubs. But, I get some of the names for us being like Chicago guys don't pop out. For me, like, okay, let's take Carlos Beltran, right? He is in his third year. He's at 57.1% of the vote last time, okay? And so his WAR is 70.1. Dustin, that's high. Now he's a guy, because they do also factor in character issues. So he kind of, if you remember, he was really the one behind the Astros banging on the garbage cans. But when I look at Beltran, I mean, this is a guy, 435 home runs, 312 stolen bases, elite offensive and defense center fielder. I mean, he's shooting up real quickly. To me, I don't think he makes it in this year. I think he does make it in maybe year 5, year 6, not this year.
But my argument with that is, Crawly, I understand there should be a difference between first ballot and then in the Hall of Fame the second time. You should, writing first ballot Hall of Famer. I think that's a really cool thing. My argument is, though, unless the class in front of you was so great, by the time you get to your third year, you haven't played baseball in a long, long, long time. What have you done to get better? Nothing. It's that the people around you aren't as good as you were potentially, right? I'm just saying, your stats have not improved. So my point is, if I understand if you don't make it in on the first time, because there's something special about being a first ballot Hall of Famer, right? That, there's the unanimous Hall of Famer, first ballot Hall of Famer, and then the next year would be your second year. So now you're a Hall of Famer. Okay. But in the third year and beyond, what have you done? Nothing. You haven't played the game. So how did your stat line get better? It's the same as it was. It means the competition potentially around you wasn't as good. And oh, by the way, we need to have this party in the summer out in New York. So we need a Hall of Fame class. Come on in.
I would say that some of these guys, okay, let's take David Wright, right? Second year, he's 6.2%. He'll be off the ballot. Jimmy Rollins, no.
I'm talking about guys, Crawly, who've hung around for a long time. Manny Ramirez, 9th year. Andrew Jones, 8th year. Torrey Hunter, 6th year. Torrey Hunter, very good. I don't know about a Hall of Famer, right?
See, Andrew Jones
is really interesting. He was really good. But when I say Andrew Jones, I know what it is for me, but when I say Andrew Jones, what's the first thing you think of? Boom, immediately. First thing you think of.
Defense is the first thing I think of. I think of his defense. That glove is probably one of the most impressive gloves I've seen as a center fielder.
Right, and I understand that. Do you want to guess? Kick a guess. We've been doing this a long time. We've known each other longer than we've been doing this. What do you think the first thing that comes to my mind when you say Andrew Jones?
Boy, I'm not sure. Not good enough. What would you say?
Bobby Cox yanking him out of the game for dogging it, okay? And dragging him out of a game in the middle of a game. Remember that?
I remember that.
That's the first thing I think of. Guess what? Not a Hall of Famer because of that.
Well, boy, that's harsh, man. 434 career home runs.
It's the Hall of Fame. The first thing you think,
434.
that's a lot. I mean, I thought he would be around 350.
No,
if
10-time Gold Glove.
Well, then what? Okay, then why wasn't he on the second vote?
I think that people sometimes just overlook guys. I think
he said
sometimes
this is his seventh. He's already had the opportunity to be on ballot 7 times. Right.
I wish
and
I
look
had
at last year's class. Look at last year's class that we just talked about. It's hot garbage at best. It's hot garbage at best. Andrew Jones, honestly, Crawly, Andrew Jones would have made that class a better class. But he couldn't even get on that class. So I'm asking, I want to know from the Hall of Fame voters that aren't voting in Andrew Jones why he's not ending up on their sheet of paper. And guess what? I know they wouldn't tell me honestly, but I guess I'm telling you, part of it is what I said. Part of it is the Bobby Cox thing.
Could be. Bobby Cox could definitely be there, but I'm just taking a look. Okay, he didn't beat anybody. We didn't hear any racial slurs, homophobic stuff.
No drugs, right?
Right. I mean, if his coach one time,
I mean, the Braves were winners. I mean, they won one World Series, but they were winning every damn year.
Right. I mean, if you're taking a look at Bobby Cox pulling a guy out, I mean, there's a lot of guys that could have been pulled out for a lot of reasons. You could have pulled Javi Baez. You could.
I know, but you didn't. I'm saying my point is, I remember. I'm just saying when you say Andrew Jones to me, that's the first thing that goes through my mind. Not that he hit 430 home runs. Not that he was an incredible center fielder. I remember Bobby Cox yanking him out of a game for dogging it.
So I'm going to put Andrew Jones as a no for you. What about Mark Burley? 5th year, 8.3%. His WAR was 59, which is kind of lower on the pitcher's end. What would you say about Mark Burley?
Yeah, again, good, not great.
Okay, so Mark Burley at 8.3% in your 5th year. If you're not double digits, you're going to start dropping off quick. I would say that.
Now, David Hall has a Hall of Fame vote.
Yes.
David Hall is a Hall of Fame voter, and some believe that it's necessary. This is also, I think, very interesting and wildly debatable, that he needs to kind of beat the drum. Like, he needs to put him on his ballot every year, and he needs to go out and solicit other Hall of Fame voters to keep his name out there in the mix.
And that's part of it too, Dustin, is that obviously for us, we pay attention to the Cubs and the White Sox, and NL Central more than others. To be like, hey, I've been following Andrew Jones's career, or I've been following some of these guys. If you're not, Carlos Beltran, I remember when I wanted the Cubs to sign him so badly. He was with the Astros and absolutely was just unbelievable. But, sometimes we may not see these guys as much as other fan bases. So for us, we may look and be like, Todd Heltner, Joe Mauer. If you were in Minnesota, Joe Mauer was huge. You know what I mean? I mean, really important. So I think that sometimes where you are, and you're talking about David Haw being a representative of the Chicago sports media, saying, hey, this Mark Burley guy is definitely a guy to look at. We talked about some of the drug guys, Andy Pettitte and Manny Ramirez. I'm shocked that Manny Ramirez is at 32%. He only has, this is his 9th year. So
that's another guy. I mean, again, Manny Ramirez, I don't think when you say Manny Ramirez, I don't go to drugs right away. You know what I mean? I go to Red Sox. I go to him being a big part of a Red Sox team that broke a curse. That's where I go with Manny Ramirez. I go with a guy who, smashed the hell out of a ball. That's what I think about Manny Ramirez. I think pine tar when I think about Manny Ramirez, right?
Or George Brett.
Yeah, right. But about pine tar and George Brett, go hand in hand. Well, my point is that, it's the drugs. But if you're talking about on this list that where we're at right now, we haven't gotten to Alex Rodriguez yet. Manny Ramirez to me is the best baseball player on this list so far. Andrew Jones would be second.
Now, when you talk about Alex Rodriguez, 4th year, 34%. Dustin, do you know what his WAR is at 117?
Again, it's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. And the fact that he is part of the broadcast team on the biggest network that carries the product, the fact that he's still not in, but he's on that panel is ridiculous. I mean, come on. And if David Ortiz is in, right? David Ortiz is in, why isn't Manny Ramirez, and why can't A-Rod be in?
I would say because both of those guys were 100% caught. They were 100% caught with violations. Right. So that would be the reason for that. And with Big Papi, with Ortiz, he was on that unanimous, the supposedly drug test that was never going to come out, the urine test that wasn't destroyed. So that's where his name came on. And just like OJ, he's looking for how that happened still. He has no clue, but I don't know if he's still looking anymore. But Dustin, out of all the Hall of Famers, those that have 100 WAR or better, there are only 25 total.
Think about that. I mean, that's crazy. So obviously he should be a Hall of Famer.
So I went and I decided, I'm like, I gotta look this up here. I'm taking a look at the guys that have 100 WAR or more, and they're all Hall of Famers except for A-Rod, and obviously the other one would be Barry Bonds. Barry Bonds has the highest WAR of any position player, 162.8. Next, Babe Ruth, 162.2. So 0.6% or 0.6 difference between Babe Ruth and Barry Bonds. Then comes Willie Mays, Ty Cobb, Henry Aaron, Tris Speaker was from the 1800s, Honus Wagner, 1800s, Stan Musial, Roger Horsby, Eddie Collins, Ted Williams, Alex Rodriguez, and Lou Gehrig. So Alex Rodriguez falls in between Ted Williams and Lou Gehrig. That is just unbelievable. Then you go Ricky Henderson, Mel Ott, Mickey Mantle, Frank Robinson, Mike Schmidt, Albert Pujols, and Joe Morgan had 100.6. I mean, that is just a phenomenal list of ball players.
It's really good, yeah.
And so Alex Rodriguez, Francis Rodriguez, K-Rod, 7.8 for relievers. And that's the other thing sometimes, Dustin, like third basemen for some reason are underrepresented. We knew about Ron Santos' struggles, very underrepresented, and no one really knows why that is. Relief pitchers, very underrepresented. So when you talk about K-Rod and stuff like that, not that much. Omar Vizquel, 8th year, 17.7. I don't see him making it. Chase Utley is in his 2nd year. His WAR was 64.5. He had 28% of the vote. I'm curious to see. I'm guessing he'll be around 40 this year. I think Chase Utley eventually gets in. David Wright, no way. But the big story this year, Dustin, is Billy Wagner. He is in his last year of eligibility. Last year, he had 73.8% of the vote. So remember, you need 75% to get in. Do you feel like Billy Wagner gets in?
No.
You don't think he gets in?
I don't.
Boy, that's brutal because I forget what the total was. I think there was like 4. He was 4 votes shy last time. And I don't know why the baseball writers do this, but they almost like, you know what I mean? Like kind of just tease you right there and then say, okay, finally, I'll switch my vote. No reason, like you said, as far as there's nothing that's changed. Sometimes I just feel like they just make them wait. But man, 422 saves, 231 ERA, 903 innings. But there's only 8 other relief pitchers in the Hall of Fame, Dustin. There's not a lot. Right. So now we get into the new guys that have made the list here. And this to me is where you get some interesting decisions here. And so obviously a lot of these guys are not going to make it. Fernando Rodney was with the Cubs. Remember him?
I do.
The bow and arrow, classic. Carlos Gonzalez, Cubs picked him up at the end of his career. He played 10 of his 12 seasons for the Rockies. Franchise leader in hits, runs, home runs. He's tied for 5th. He's up there in a lot of them. 3-time All-Star, but we'll see what Cargo does. Brian McCann, do anything for you?
No.
Adam Jones. Hanley Ramirez, Russell Martin. Now Ben Zobrist, 44.5. Remember I told you that sweet spot was 50 to 70. Now, he's unique, Dustin, because he really was kind of like the first utility players, right?
Right.
And so there really isn't anybody like him in the Hall of Fame. Like if you're a Hall of Famer, you have one set spot. But, he's from 2009 to 16, he had a 123 OPS plus. He played on 2 World Series teams, including the MVP for the Cubs. I'm just curious. Do you think he'll get 5%? Do you think he'll stay on the ballot for a couple of years? I don't think he's going to be a Hall of Famer, but do you think he makes it past year 1? Got to get 5%.
Tough.
All right. Troy Tulowitzki, to me, too injured all the time. Curtis Granderson, not really making it for me there. Now we get interesting. Felix Hernandez, King Felix. All right. 290 ERA over 1,796 2/3 innings. Pitched at least 200 innings in each of those seasons. Won an ERA title in 2010 and 14. Finished the top 10 in AL Cy Young 6 times. He won the Cy Young in 2010. He also threw the 23rd perfect game in MLB history. King Felix. Now, I don't think he's a first ballot Hall of Famer, but do you think he gets there eventually?
Eventually.
All right. Yeah. Dustin Pedroia, 51.9 WAR, AL Rookie of the Year in Boston. Obviously, he was involved in some of those World Series. 8 of the 9 players in front of Pedroia are in that WAR list are Hall of Famers as far as second baseman. And any thoughts on Dustin Pedroia, Hall of Famer?
No.
Ian Kinsler?
No.
All right. Now we're going to get tricky for you here. Now we go with CC Sabathia, first timer that is going to be on here. Obviously, we know, gosh, remember that when I think it was 2008 when the Brewers got him and the Cubs and Brewers both got into the postseason. CC Sabathia, just absolutely tremendous player. 19-year career. He only had 1 Cy Young, but he's in the top 5 times. Where are you at with CC Sabathia?
Maybe. Again, these, I'm a hard, again, I guess they have to have a party. So I guess better than some of these other names.
Well, 134 games, 381 ERA over 1,918 innings, right? He got his 250th victory. He had 250 victories and 3,000 strikeouts. That's pretty much the numbers that'll get you in, right?
That's a big number.
250 and 3,000?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't even know if you and I will ever see another 300-game winner in our life.
No, probably not.
That seems to have gone the way of the dodo, but he's one of 15 pitchers in MLB history to pass 250 victories and 3,000 strikeouts. And only Randy Johnson, Steve Carlton, and Sabathia are the only left-handers. So is he a first ballot Hall of Famer? Let's go that route.
Nah.
You're going no on Sabathia.
Not his first ballot.
So there hasn't been like a starting pitcher in the Hall of Fame in a very long time. For me, I kind of feel like CC Sabathia I would put him at like about 77%. I think he is going to do it. The last starter to make the Hall of Fame was Roy Halladay in 2019. So it has definitely been a while. Now there's one more guy, Dustin, that I have not mentioned, and there is a question that I have for you. Ichiro Suzuki, 60 WAR. Does Ichiro Suzuki make it as a first ballot Hall of Famer?
Probably.
You are tough. I mean, he is.
But listen, he's a Hall of Famer.
He's a Hall of Famer.
Right. Probably. I'm sure. Is he going to? Yes, he's going to. Yeah. He's going to get in.
He had
no
200.
I would be shocked if he wasn't a first-time Hall of Famer.
200 hit plateau in each of his first 10 seasons.
That's phenomenal. That's
331, 1,047 runs, stole 383 bases, All-Star and Gold Glover every year, 3,000 big league hit in 2016, and more than 4,000 when you combine the Nippon.
All right, you talked me into it. First ballot Hall of Famer.
Now the question, Dustin, he retired with a 311 average in today's game. Think about that. I mean, he retired 5 years ago, 311 as his average. The question people are asking now think about this, because again, the Hall of Fame also considers other factors. Like I said, what kind of person you are, the impact you have on the game. Is Ichiro a unanimous Hall of Famer? It's only happened one other time.
Yeah, I think somebody will just be that guy. Right? Somebody will just be that guy.
Only Mariano Rivera is the only one. Babe Ruth was not. Ty Cobb. I mean, these guys were not unanimous Hall of Famers, which gets back to the point of what are these writers thinking sometimes? Like, how is Babe Ruth not a unanimous Hall of Famer? Greg Maddux was not a unanimous Hall of Famer. I mean, like, guys that you sit there and you say to yourself.
I'm saying, so because those guys weren't, now I'm not saying that I'm not going to say that it was right, but because those guys weren't, then, I say no to this.
But just because they did something goofy or dumb doesn't mean we got to keep doing. We can finally say, look, that was just a dumb, adequate idea.
It's a solid point. You're making a good point, but
Who do you think the next Cub will be? A guy that played, let's say, more than 2 seasons or the end of the career. I'm not talking about a Goose Gossage or Fred McGriff. I'm talking about a guy who played meaningful baseball for the Cubs. Who do you think is next?
I mean, at some point, Mark Grace, maybe.
So he would have to be on the whatever the Veterans Committee is
right.
called.
But I'm saying that's what I mean. Yeah. I mean, I think he might be, maybe because he's in the media now. But I mean, maybe the DUIs kill him, right? I mean,
now what about Johnny Lester?
Well, but I mean, like if we went into a deep dive, John Lester versus Mark Burley.
That would see, and that's where you get tricky.
Saying how close. I'm saying like how close are their right? How close are their numbers? Now the difference would be Lester's two World Series, right, or just one?
Correct. He's got it with Boston and the Cubs.
Well, and see, that's why I think. I mean, if you're going to put, but I think they remind me of each other.
Right. I'm just trying to think. Would Sosa ever get in? I mean, that's always going to be a question.
Well, I mean, first you'd have to have A-Rod getting in, right?
You'd have to, if you were going to let those guys in, there's a whole list of players that would have to get in that along with Sosa. So, Sosa didn't stay long on the ballot. Him and McGuire did not stay long on the ballot. I want to say 1, maybe 2 years, but they did not stay long. So I'm just trying to figure out the next time I'm going to have an opportunity to go to Cooperstown. I'm looking at my wall that I have of all the great Cubs of all time, and I don't see anyone else getting in anywhere in the near future. So hopefully Johnny Lester one day.
Yep. I mean, that would probably be the one, buddy. That would probably be the one. You are listening to the Fly the W670 podcast. It is episode 96 of season number 3. Pat Hughes returns to the Fly the W podcast. Don't forget to leave us one of this 5-star reviews. And in this segment, Crawly talks to the Hall of Fame Cubs broadcaster, Pat Hughes of 670 The Score, about joining the Cubs Hall of Fame, winning the Ford Frick, and some of his most memorable calls.
Joining me now on the Fly the W podcast, I am honored to be joined by Cubs Hall of Fame broadcaster Pat Hughes. Pat, how are you?
Well, I'm fine. Settling in after a Thanksgiving yesterday and full of food, and it was a nice, peaceful day, except for the Bears game, of course. And all is good. I'm looking forward to the Cubs season already, and I'm looking forward to the event at Club 400 on December 7th. And we're going to have some fun and talk a little baseball, and it'll be a good time.
I got to tell you, Pat, I've been to many a Club 400 parties, and to me, the Christmas party is the best. It's the most intimate. Everyone's just in a festive mood, and hearing your stories are always the best, so I know it is going to be a great time. Pat, since the last time we talked, you've been the recipient of many different awards and accolades. One of them, the Cubs rebooted the Cubs Hall of Fame. It was something that they had earlier, and then it kind of died down. But then in August of 2022, they had a ceremony for you, and it was you, Jose Cardinal, and the late great Buck O'Neill. Crane Kenny came on the air. You were supposed to read the recipient's name. You weren't. You didn't know that you'd be reading your own name. How surprised were you?
Very. What a great moment that was. And the Cardinals were in town, and it was just a night game, and I'm just broadcasting the game. And Crane Kenny, who's done more for me than any executive I think ever has, came into the booth and let me know that I was going to be a part of the Cubs Hall of Fame. That was in 2022. And then later that year, in December of 2022, I got the call from Cooperstown. And again, Crane Kenny played a pivotal role in that activity as well. And I went into Cooperstown in July of 2023. So it's been an amazing period here, and I can't really believe how lucky I've been. And I'm just a worker. I'm really just a guy that loves baseball. I have great partners in Ron Coomer and Ron Santo before him. Zach Zaveman is the third man in the booth right now. And really, we have fun. We cover the game. We laugh. We talk baseball. We talk strategy. We do silly things. And it's just something I'm so happy to be a part of. And as long as I'm broadcasting for the Cubs, I hope Ron Coomer is sitting right next to me.
Yeah, I mean, you got, and when you mention Ron Coomer, it makes me laugh because I remember when you announced that you were going to be going into the Cubs Hall of Fame, you said, quote, "I'm so pleased. I can't even believe it. I know I have to focus on play-by-play, so I'm going to keep doing that." And Ron shoots back, "I think the play-by-play can stop there for a second, partner." So, you guys both laughed. It's always a good time. And that whole Cubs Hall of Fame ceremony is just beautiful, and I feel like every year it keeps getting better and better. They kind of, add little things to it. But you got the blue Cubs Hall of Fame blazers. You got to throw the first pitch with Jose. And since then, there's been 2 more ceremonies. You had one with Sean Dunston and one with Mark Grace. And then this year it was Kerry Wood and Aramis Ramirez. Do you have a vote on who you believe belongs in the next class?
I don't really go there because there are a lot of candidates, and I'd have to sit down and look at the list and then analyze and maybe do a little research on each one and see who is the most worthy. So, no, I let others make that decision. I do have a vote, it should be known. When you're a member of the Hall of Fame for the Cubs and for Cooperstown, you get to vote in these various elections. So I'll have a vote. But no, I don't advocate anyone before the process begins.
Okay, so you do have a vote. That's got to be, it's a big decision here. And I'm taking a look here. I have a picture that I just got signed by a bunch of players recently at the Chicago Sports Spectacular. I know you've been there many a times. This is signed by Rhino, Andre, Billy, Kerry, Sean Dunston, and I can't wait to have you sign it at Club 400. But what does it feel like when you're on the field and you're there with the Hawk and Rhino and Sweet Swing and Billy Williams and Sutton, Fergie, and just all these great Cubs? What does it feel like to be included in that company?
They've all treated me so well, and yet the baseball fan in me is still a 10 or 12-year-old kid thinking, here I am on the field with Billy Williams. I used to go to Candlestick Park and watch Billy Williams play against Willie Mays and the Giants many, many, many years ago. And now here I am, members of the same Hall of Fame as Billy Williams, along with the late Ron Santo. But Fergie Jenkins is in there. And, thinking about Ronnie, I wish so much that really, Paul, when I think back to 2016, it would have meant so much to Ron Santo and to Ernie Banks to have been part of that Cubs World Series championship. So I think about them. But I'll tell you the truth, when I'm sometimes in a group and we're all wearing our blue jackets, I think, what am I doing here? Do I really belong in the same stratosphere or the same orbit as Ryne Sandberg, Billy Williams, Rick Sutcliffe, Andre Dawson? Do I really belong here? I guess I do, but it's taking some getting used to.
Well, I'm going to speak on behalf of all Cub fans there. The saying, yes, absolutely, 100% you do. Like you mentioned before, December 2022, you were up again for the Ford Frick Award, which is presented annually to a broadcaster for major contributions to baseball. And Pat, I'm not going to lie, I was 100% certain you were going to get that call in 2020. And unfortunately, like many Cub fans, we were all disappointed. Well, obviously there's many great broadcasters. When you're all up for the Hall of Fame, you're not going up against, guys that are not deserving. But, I think about, you mentioned Ron Santo, and I think about, sometimes he was waiting for that call and the call that he got was not the one that he expected. When you knew that there was going to be a call on December 7th, 2022, were you a little nervous as far as, I hope this time is it? I mean, what's going through your head at that moment?
You're hoping. I'm not really a religious man, so I can't say I'm praying for it. I'm not sure if that's the type of thing that a person should or would be able to pray for anyway. But I was hoping. I feel like I look at some of the other guys in there. I knew from talking to some of the current Hall of Fame broadcasters that I had a chance, and I knew that they were in my corner without mentioning a lot of names. The late Dick Enberg, the last time he came into the booth, the first time the Cubs played the Padres, he was doing Padre TV at the end of his career, and he said, Pat, I know you were right at the top of the list. I'd hang in there. He said, I like your chances the next time. So that was awfully nice of the late Dick Enberg. But Bob Costas was very supportive. Bob Uecker, and there have been others. Marty Brenneman, very much so. Tony Kubek called me the day that I made it into Cooperstown. So you're hoping, you realize that, like you said, there are always a lot of viable candidates, deserving guys who have done it longer than I have. And I've just finished my 42nd consecutive year of big league announcing. And by the way, Paul, I'm very excited for next year. It's going to be my 30th year as the Cubs lead radio play-by-play man, and that's a milestone that I'm very proud of. So I'm looking forward to that. But it's one of those things. It's almost an out-of-body experience when you do get the call from Cooperstown. You start thinking about your parents and your childhood and playing your first games and then listening to games and going to Candlestick to watch your first big league games. And it's a wave of emotions and memories. That would be probably the best way I could explain it.
Yeah, and Marquee was there the Cubs and Marquee crew. They were there, and you know, it was just so awesome to see that. Now the ceremony comes in July, and you're joined not only by Ron Coomer and Zach Zaidman and your Cubs radio family, but also by members of other organizations. You're with the Milwaukee Brewers, where you worked prior to the Cubs. I mean, who was all there at the ceremony, and did that surprise you?
Well, first of all, it was very nice to have my wife, Trish, there. And we've been married 37 years. My daughter, Amber, had to fly in overnight on the red eye from Colorado. She's in the real estate business, so she made it there. A high school basketball teammate of mine, Phil Vince, my lifetime college buddy, Danny Samino, flew all the way in from Palm Springs. And Judd Surratt, with whom I worked in Chicago, and now he's the great hockey television voice of the Boston Bruins. He made it there. I heard from so many people and so many fans. There were just fans that I had never even met that just loved Cubs baseball, and they were fans of the broadcast, and they showed up in Cooperstown, which is amazing to me. It's not an easy place to get to, literally, figuratively, I might add. It's not easy to get there as a broadcaster, and just as a fan, it's not a big city. You have to take a flight to Albany or to another town, Syracuse, and then drive the rest of the way. You have to really want to get to Cooperstown to be there. But it was so sweet. And just some of the other people. I remember the night before there was a big dinner. Andre Dawson, he came over to my table where I'm having dinner with all my brother was there too. My brother Chuck, I love him dearly. And we're all sitting at the table. And he came over and just stood next to me as if to say, you know, I'm supporting you. I've been there. I know how nervous you are about making your speech tomorrow here in Cooperstown. He just kind of smiled at me. And I thought it was the coolest thing that he could have done, just showing his support to me. And we talked about the speech. And he said, you know what? Just stick to the main points. Don't be wavering too far off the main path. Just stick to the main points. And it was so gracious of Andre. I'll always remember that. But the Ricketts family, they chartered a plane on his private jet, I think, to fly in for the ceremony. So that was cool. But just the whole thing, it was amazing. And it's a memory that I'll cherish for as long as I live.
And even some Brewers players, you know, from your, you know, people sometimes, you know, you're so associated with the Cubs, they forget that, you know, you were in the broadcast booth with the Brewers for 12 years, I think.
As you say that, Paul Molitor and Robin Yount both were there in Cooperstown. They both made a point to A, sit in to listen to my speech, and B, they sought me out in the little restaurant later on to tell me how much they enjoyed my speech. So that made me feel great that Paulie and Robin, just two of the best players you will ever watch on an everyday basis, and the fact that they thought enough of me to show me that respect was very sweet.
Oh, 100%. And you said one of the first people to call you was Bob Uecker, who, you know, I travel a lot between Illinois and Wisconsin. And if the Cubs are not on, you know, and I'm not listening to 670 The Score, then I switch on over to TMJ to listen to Bob call games for many, many years on my way up, just because I have a love of broadcasting, just, you know, obviously like you do. But you know, it's funny that you mentioned Bob Uecker in your speech.
Yeah, I mentioned him because he was one of the first to call me, Paul. He called me about an hour later. He was driving in the car with his wife, Judy. And I said, Bob, thank you. It's great to hear from you. I said, I think I learned as much baseball from you as I did from anybody, because you were the first ex-big league player that I worked next to and sat next to for 3 hours of the game and 2 hours before the game. So 5 hours a day times 162 games, you pick up an awful lot of knowledge if you're curious. And I think I'm a very curious person, always trying to learn things. And I said, Bob, I think I learned more baseball from you than anyone. He said, well, that's great. He said, I probably should have learned the game myself before I tried teaching it to you.
Yeah, he's one of a kind, right?
Yeah, he's a great man.
Now, being inducted as a Ford Frick recipient, I mean, obviously it's special to anyone, but I feel like for you it has extra special meaning since you've always been an aficionado of baseball broadcasters, so much so that you have a CD series called Baseball Voices that you produce, you write, you narrate. I've been on your website, baseballvoices.com, numerous times, and I have the Ron Santo, the Harry Carey, the World Series, and I've given them to gifts as many to many fellow Cub fans. I know you are too modest to ever create a Pat Hughes Baseball Voices, but do you think you would ever let anyone you trust create a CD of your best broadcast moments?
Well, I mean, I've thought about it, but you're right. I would let somebody else produce that. I can't see myself being that self-absorbed and doing that. I've actually had another Hall of Fame announcer. I'm not going to mention who it was, but he offered to do the narration. He said, whenever you decide to put your CD together, let me know and I'll be happy to narrate it. So that was nice. But I don't know how people buy their music or their CDs anymore, or their audio content. It used to be cassettes, then it was CDs, and now I don't know exactly what it is. They say, well, we stream it. Well, what does that mean? You got to go to, and you purchase little blocks of audio. I don't really know how that works. So that would be another thing that kind of confuses me right now. But that's the generation that I came from, and I'm sure young people would laugh and say, oh, it's easy. You just go here, you go there, you go zap, zap, zap. You give them your credit card and you got your audio, right? It's probably something that simple, but I'm oblivious.
I'll tell you, Pat, I buy the CDs and then I upload them into the computer and it just goes right there and it's really simple. And then I love having the CD. And then, of course, the guys that I bought, the Pat Hughes and Ron, Harry Carey and Ron are no longer with us, but that would also be a cool thing, because you get the, it used to be album covers, like you said. And then, but now I would have the CD, people could have that signed by you. It'd be really cool. So when I think about the CD, some of the great Pat Hughes calls, I mean, I remember when you guys, that when you were on WGN, there used to be like a recap show of the Pat and Ron show, of you, the best moments of you and Ron Santo. So whoever would be doing that CD would have a lot of work cut out for them. You've called over 6,000 major league games. You mentioned, over a 40-year career, 30 plus seasons as the Cubs. How about this? You've announced 57 postseasons games, more than any other Cubs broadcaster, 9 no-hitters during your career, and you were the first broadcaster to call a Cubs World Series victory. Is there anything you haven't called or something you would like to call that you haven't had the chance to just yet?
That's a great question, Paul. I don't feel like I've missed much, to be honest with you. And being in that chair that night in Cleveland with Ron Coomer and calling that final out, I still get chills just thinking about it. And I can remember, because I've had people request me to write out the final call, but it just comes to mind. A little bouncer slowly towards Bryant. He will glove it and throw to Rizzo. It's in time. And the Chicago Cubs win the World Series. The Cubs come pouring out of the dugout, jumping up and down like a bunch of delirious 10-year-olds. The Cubs have done it. The longest drought in the history of American sports is over, and the celebration begins. And I'm very proud to have made that call. You never know how a game is going to end. I had a lot of people, Paul, say, did you plan out what you were going to say? I said, well, yes and no. You can never plan out the final call. A ball game can end 100 different ways. It can end on a strikeout, a routine pop fly to the first baseman, a ground ball to short, a game-winning double into the left field corner, a home run. My goodness, wouldn't that be something? But you never know. So no, you don't try to plan out anything like that. You let that fall where it may. What I was planning was to make sure that my voice did not get carried away. And I wanted to be under control. I kept saying, keep your voice down. Keep your voice down. You're going to have that natural adrenaline and excitement. Don't worry about being excited enough. What you want to be concerned about is not getting too excited. So I was literally saying that to myself in the final minutes leading up to that final call. Keep your voice down. There's a little bouncer slowly toward Bryant. And even as the throw went across the infield, I kept saying, don't overdo it. You're going to have plenty of drama in your voice just naturally because of the monumental aspect of that moment. So it was an interesting thing to go through. I wouldn't want to do it every day because it's so nerve-wracking. And yet I would love to do it at least one more time to call another Cubs World Series. But if I don't, at least we had that one. And I'm very, very proud of that call. But people say, well, would you change anything? Not really. I can honestly say that I would not change a single thing from the time I said a little bouncer until I said the celebration begins. And I'm very happy to be able to say that.
Well, it is truly a great call. I'm going to be selfish. I'm going to say the one last thing I'd love to hear Pat Hughes call is a Wrigley Series Cubs World Series. Like the Cubs clinched the World Series at Wrigley Field. I have been at Wrigley at numerous special moments, the David Bodie Grand Slam, the Miggy homer, the Kerry Wood homer in Game 7 of 2003. I've been there when that building had been shaking, but I wonder what it would be like if the Cubs won the World Series at Wrigley, and I would definitely love to hear your call of that.
That would be exciting. I would love to be there. Yeah, you're right. That would be the only thing that would top what happened in Cleveland would be for the Cubs to win a World Series at Wrigley Field. That would be, because Wrigley was built in the mid-1910s, I think 1914 or 15. The Cubs won the World Series in 1908 and then not again until 8 years ago. So never at Wrigley has there been a World Series clinching moment. So yes, I would love to be there for that. And someday it will happen.
Sure as God made green apples, right? Just like Harry said. But when with that, you talked about your final call. Last time you were at Club 400, you wrote it on the wall. I don't know if you remember that. And every time I go down, and I think it was like one of the first times maybe you wrote it out. But to me, every time I go down there, I always kind of take a look and it makes me smile. And now you are making your return to Club 400. This coming up this Saturday, December 7th. It's from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. You are going to be there. Former Cubs PR director Bob Eibach is going to be the MC. Of course, Stuart McVicker always has just, it's like you said earlier, to walk through Club 400 is like the Mecca for Cub fans to be able to kind of just see all of this stuff. There's going to be pictures, autographs, a Q&A by Bob, food and drinks, raffle prizes, and live auctions. And Pat, I've seen you at Club 400. I saw you when you did it with Kerry Wood for the Kerry Wood Foundation for the anniversary of the 20 strikeout game. You have an ability like we know on the radio, but in person, it's just so cool to hear you and see you weave these stories around. I think if you're a Cub fan and maybe you need a gift from your children, or maybe you want to give a gift to your kids, this is a great gift. My family, my kids are older. We do more experiences than gifts now, but this is really a great experience for any Cub fan to be at.
Well, I agree. Thank you for saying that. The website regarding Game 7 scorecards, the Kerry Wood 20 strikeout game scorecard, the NLCS clinching game scorecard of 2016, also the Field of Dreams. Those are all at baseballvoices.com. You were nice enough to mention the website regarding all the CDs we have, but there's bobbleheads and there's CDs and scorecards and Somebody gave me the picture. I should remember his name, and I'm sorry that I don't. The gentleman who took the picture of the Wrigley Field marquee right outside the ballpark moments after I had been named to the Hall of Fame, and it says, "Congratulations, Pat Hughes, Baseball Hall of Famer." And I took pictures of that, so that I'm happy to sign for anybody. And yeah, it's been an amazing time. It really has. And to do all of this stuff in Chicago with the amazing fans and the sizable audience that we have every single day, and how much they care, that's what makes all of these experiences even more special for me. And the size of the audience, I mean, that's key. But the passion is really the key thing, and how much they love the Cubs. And that's one reason why when I got this job, I'm not a broadcast gypsy, Paul. I'm not looking around for another gig. I've got the gig that I want. I've kept it coming up on 30 years, and I'm going to do it until I feel like I've done enough.
Well, Pat, I hope that's not for many, many more years. Thank you for jumping on the Fly the W podcast. We all love listening to you at 670 The Score with Ron Coomer, Zach Zaidman, and all the producers. It's such a fun broadcast, and we look very forward to seeing you at Club 400. Thank you for Stuart McVicker and Autograph One for helping put this all together, and Baseball Voices. We are so appreciative, and we're looking forward to you on December 7th at Club 400.
Oh, you're very welcome. You do your homework. You know what you're talking about. It was a pleasure to spend some time here with you, and I'll see you on December 7th, which, by the way, is the 2-year anniversary of the day that I got the call from Cooperstown. I was in my living room, and so that's the 2-year anniversary. Very exciting.
We're looking forward, Pat. Thank you again.
Thanks, Paul.
This is the Fly the W670 podcast, season 3, episode 96. Pat Hughes, you just heard him on the Fly the W podcast. Don't forget to listen, download, review, subscribe to the podcast. Leave us a 5-star review. You can email us at flythew670 on gmail.com. And don't forget, you can watch us on the 670 The Score YouTube page. Crawly, nice job with Pat. Time to go a little bit around the bases and give a little snippet of some Cubs news and promote the Club 400 Christmas party.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. It is going to be this Saturday coming up. So for those of you that are interested, Pat Hughes, as you heard, is going to be the guest Saturday, December 7th from 1 to 5 p.m. It's going to be a lot of fun. There may be a few tickets left, but it'll include all the fun stuff: pictures, autographs, Q&A, food and drink, raffle prizes, and live auction. So I would love to see all you guys out there. Dustin, the Cubs have been going through a whole bunch of coaching changes, but there was one recently that we were not expecting. This is from our friend Fish on the Farm. The Marlins are hiring Daniel Moskos to be their new pitching coach. Moskos is 6 years removed from his playing career. He spent 1 season in the majors in 2011 with Pittsburgh, pitched in Mexico in 2018. He then went and worked with the New York Yankees, which is where the Cubs poached him from. And from all accounts, man, Moskos is going to really be missed, really. And when you have Tommy Hotovy on, I'm sure that's something that you want to talk to him about.
Absolutely.
Because he was definitely his right-hand man. He did a lot of good work with him for the team, as far as, helping out. So, add this to the list of players or managers that are going to be changed. Like I said, that wasn't a council decision. That was Daniel Moskos getting an opportunity to go somewhere better. But we do know that his replacement is coming. Casey Jacobson is getting promoted. This is what our friend Cohen said from the AAA Iowa Cubs. He said, Casey's been the most present, available, candid, and honest rover when he come to visit the Iowa Cubs. He's universally respected among the Cubs pitchers. Not a good hire, but a great hire. So when you hear words like that, that's exciting. And, Sahadev Sharma kind of wrote it up, but, that he has been working with a lot of the players already. So it's not like these players have to get familiar with him. Jacobson worked with Porter Hodge, Daniel Palencia, Jordan Wicks. Cade Horton, Ben Brown, Wisniewski, all of those guys are young guys. So they're going to have experience with Jacobson. So as much as you hate to lose Moskos, he's a guy that's been at the major league level. At least they got someone in there who can be an adequate replacement.
Yep, I like it.
So that hopefully, like I said, wishing Moscow's nothing but the best. He's always a good guy.
What's this line? Ricketts called dorks, Crawly?
So we, Dustin, on the last episode, we had Bob Nightingale talking about some of the issues that ownership had. We heard about, we had audio clips from all sorts of different people, as far as John Heyman when he was on your show. We had Jeff Passan talking about the Cubs. Now Ken Rosenthal on his podcast has a segment called Dorks of the Week. And listen to who he gave the Dorks of the Week to.
Who is your dork of the week, Ken?
I'm going to go with Cubs ownership. And the reason for that is all we're hearing out of Chicago, the north side, is we're not going to be involved in any of the big free agents. We're going to just kind of do some other things. They're trying to trade Cody Bellinger. I get that. But where are the Cubs? The Red Sox, after sleepwalking through the past few off seasons, have finally arisen and awakened, and they're acting like a big market team should. The Cubs, playing in a division that is eminently winnable. I'm sorry, Milwaukee's really good, but the Cubs can obviously be better than the Milwaukee Brewers. They have more resources than Milwaukee Brewers. They have the ability, if they spend some money, to become a special team. They're a little bit away. We all recognize that. They need more. More starting pitching, I would say more offense as well, and a better bullpen. All of this. But look at that division. Milwaukee, they're not going to spend. We know that. They never spend. Pittsburgh, they're Pittsburgh. Cincinnati, okay, they might be a little bit better. They're trying to do some things, but they're Cincinnati. And St. Louis is clearly taking a step back. So the Cubs have an opportunity here to maybe seize control of this division, and they are squandering it.
So Dustin,
Kenny Rosenthal calling people dorks. I mean, that's okay, Kenny.
You can't call somebody a dork if you wear a bow tie. That's my theory.
Right. I mean,
but
Kenny.
When you talk about an offseason for the Cubs, as far as just the visuals, this is multiple now. We talked about Heyman, we talked about Passan, and now you got Rosenthal, and then we had Bob Nightingale on the last episode talking about ownership. This is a national story, Dustin. This is not a Chicago local story like, hey, sell the team, Jerry. This is like a big deal, and a lot of these guys it looks bad, is what I'm saying. The optics look really bad this offseason for the Cubs.
Yeah. They don't look great, but like we talked about at the beginning, the meetings are coming up. The winter meetings are coming up. So hopefully something can happen. We talked Hall of Fame earlier, Crawly. How about a little Latin baseball Hall of Fame?
Yeah, I saw this was interesting. Our friend Hector Gomez was putting it out there. Hey, Alex Rodriguez is making the Latin Baseball Hall of Fame. Andrew Jones, Alfonso Soriano, Johan Santana, and Felix Hernandez will be inducted tomorrow, Monday. So Alfonso Soriano, I don't know if you've seen him lately. The dude is bulked up. He is like massive, looks like a bodybuilder. In this picture that they have of him here, if you're watching on 670, the Score YouTube channel, that's the wiry frame that I remember of Soriano. But, I hope he comes back more. He never liked going to CubsCon, stuff like that. I hope he does come back and does more thing with the Cubs community. But, good on Alfonso Soriano. He made a big contract. And I know it's always hard to live up to those contracts, but I thought he was a good dude. Now, Dustin, we were talking about Dorks of the Week and the Ricketts not spending money. There's a football game played by what was it, Northwestern in Illinois?
That's right.
And this is Paul Sullivan. He said, time for an overpriced beverage at Wrigley, spiked hot cocoa. So you could get a hot cocoa spiked with Maker's Mark or a couple other different beverages, Jim Beam, $18, Dustin.
You could buy a bottle. You're getting close to buying a bottle of that for $18. This is crazy. This is where I sit there and, I was not a big proponent of the scoreboard. And I'll say I'm wrong. I like what they've done with the scoreboards on either side of the old scoreboard, but I was against that. I was against all the ads on the doors, all that stuff. Yeah, I thought when they put the Weber grill, I thought it was the end of the world.
Right. But the one thing we were always told is that all those revenues are going to go to the baseball side, right? They're going to get us the players.
I told you, Crawly, how many more times I got to tell you about concrete, buddy?
Well, I was told that it had nothing to do with concrete, that the building stuff was separate, that the money made from the baseball team was going to go to the baseball ops, not to the business ops. So again, if you're going to be charging,
well, then they got, but again, like, you know, I mean, like, I guess then do non-Cubs games count as that kind of revenue? Is that straight into the Ricketts pocket revenue? You know, like, I think that would be an interesting. I think that's another question for you, Crawly. Another question for you, Cubs at CubsCon. Is the game against the Pirates money the same as the Eddie Vedder concert?
You know, and that's the funny thing is we'll never know, Dustin, until they open the books. To me, like,
and they don't need to. They're never going to. Yeah, I mean, they're
never going to do it. But I'm just telling you, it's you know, I'm very curious as to what money goes where. I mean, I'd love to see it. Dustin, the title of our last episode was "What are the Cubs organization? What is the Cubs organization doing?" But now I got to ask, what are the Dodgers doing? I'm not, you know, trying to be negative.
Cheating. They're cheating.
I wish the Cubs were doing what the Dodgers
mortgaging their future.
I mean, this is Dustin starting to get insane. When we last left off, that was when the news broke in our last podcast. They were signing Blake Snell and his deal. And to me, it was just an eye-popping amount of money that he has. His deal is the third highest, not including Ohtani, because Ohtani's a two-way player. I'm not going to go there. But he's making $36.4 million a year. Only Jacob deGrom is ahead of him on that. And I want to say there's one other player that's ahead of him. Zach Wheeler is making $42 million a year. Jacob deGrom, 37. And so you're talking about Blake Snell. He's got a 5-year, $182 million deal. And then, you know, what really just blows my mind, Dustin, is the deal they made for Tommy Edman. I mean, that to me was absolutely bonkers. Did you see?
Oh, yeah, I saw that for a utility guy.
For a utility guy. I've seen Tommy Edmonds play. You've seen Tommy Edmonds play when he was with the Cardinals, right? He wasn't, and he was also with the White Sox. He wasn't anybody that blew your mind. 5 years.
He's fine. Right. He's fine.
$1 million?
Right. It's absolutely crazy.
Someone's got to explain that to me. I'm not saying the Dodgers don't know what they're doing. Apparently they do.
They do.
But, you know, when you take a look at that Blake Snell deal of another $100 million deal, the Dodgers right now have issued, since the last offseason, 5 $100 million plus contracts. The rest of Major League Baseball, the other 29 teams, 5.
Yeah.
That's insane to me. And you're looking at these things here. 62 million of Snell's contract will be deferred. Yep. So it's what they're doing. I have no clue what they're doing. I don't have any clue how it's legal. I know it's legal. I know other teams do it. I've never seen any team do it to this extent. Obviously, we know about Bobby Bonilla Day, Steven Strasburg. There's other guys. Madison Bumgarner's still getting paid by the Diamondbacks. It happens. But this is ridiculous. But no. I mean, when you look at this is the Dodgers. You know, they're going to have Freddie Freeman till 27, Glasnow till 28, Blake Snell till 2029, Tommy Edman till 2030, Mookie Betts till 2032, Will Smith till 2033, Shohei Ohtani till 2033. And if Yamamoto doesn't opt out, they have him till 2035. I mean, that's just insane to me. I just wonder if this is a bubble that's going to burst.
Yep. Yep. It's got to eventually, right? It's got to eventually. But let's hope the Cubs, Crawly, by the time we get to our next podcast, potentially, they'll have spent a little bit of money or done something. That's a wrap, my friend. Don't forget to listen, download, review, and subscribe to the Fly the W podcast. Follow on all the socials, Fly the W on Facebook, Instagram, and you can email us, flythew670@gmail.com, and you can watch us, that's right, by subscribing to the 670 The Score YouTube channel. Crawly, have a great start to your week, and the countdown to Christmas is on.
Yes, sir. The Club 400 Christmas party coming up on Saturday. Still get your tickets for that. And don't forget, you know, there's going to be a lot of exciting things going on this week. Hopefully those $20 hot chocolates get some players. Go Cubs! Hey guys, it's Crawly. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more content like this. If you want to see more of our videos, be sure to check out our playlist and let us know what you think in the comments below. Also, don't forget to follow us on social media to stay up to date with our latest episodes. Links are in the description. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Go Cubs!